Alright, this video is going to be going over 3.3 special cam. And that one is this bottom one here. It's very important that you might watch this first part of the video because you need to start with the ellipse first. And there's a certain sequence that you need to draw this in. And that sequence to draw this in is in the text, the very last page in Unit 3 text. It goes over exactly how to draw this ellipse. So that's the first thing we're going to do after we figure out our centering and build our box. And we went ahead and blown it up already. So right away, just like we know all the time, we've got to center this rectangle box. And I know it's rectangle because I have a length that's 6.5 and I have a height that's 4.25. Keep in mind we're doing decimal, and from our previous drawing we know that this space is 7 5/8 tall, and we know this space here going lengthwise is 10.5 inches. So what we do, just like every other time, we subtract our actual object from our actual space. Okay, and if we were to put that in decimal form, this would be 10.5 minus 6.5, which is just simply 4. Okay, I need to divide that by 2 because we have 2 spaces on each side of this object, and then the answer of course is 2. So technically if I come over 2, then I come over 6.5, that's going to be 2 plus 6 would be 8.5, and then 8.5 plus 2 more would be 10.5, which is our space of 10.5. So I need to come over 2 inches from the left and from the right. Or from the left and then from the right. Now we're going to do the height here. Remember, we know what the decimal form this is at. We know what it's in, because 5/8 in a decimal form is simply 0.625. I know that just by memorizing it, but if you need to, you can always go to your resource tab within OneNote and pull up your conversion chart to look at it to find out what 5/8 is, which is right here, and scroll over and it says 6.25. Notice it has a 0 at it, and that's just because it's in the fourth digit, or the fourth place column. Notice it's a 0, which means you don't really need to write it. So yeah, anywho, moving on. So I know my space is 7.625, and I've got to subtract it from my 4.25, and then I've got to take that number and divide it by 2 because there's going to be a top and a bottom space. So I come up with a measurement coming up from the top of 1.6875. Now, we need to find that in a fraction, right? So let's pull up our conversion chart. Remember, we're 4 decimal places. 0.6875. 0.6875. Boom, there it is. It's 11/16. So I'm going to come up 1 and 11/16, go my 4 1/4, and then come up another 1 and 11/16. So we're going to build our box first, just like we done before. If I can grab my scales here. Here we go. I'm going to use the architect scale because it lays flat, so I can actually lean it up there real nice like. So I need to come over 2, and then I need to come over 6.5, which technically is 8.5. So there's my verticals. Remember, I'm going to be a little bit darker for you guys, but in the actual drawing you don't want to draw this dark because it becomes hard to erase. Now we're going to go vertical with this. I'm going to flip it around so you guys can actually see. Remember, I got to come 1 and 11/16 up. So remember, there's 16 hash marks between the 1 and the 2, which means halfway is a 1/2 inch, but there's also 8/16. So if I think about it, that's 8, 9, 10, 11/16. There's 0, 1, 8, 10, 11/16. And then from that point, I'm just going to go ahead and move it up and go my 4 1/4. And then this last space should be 1, 11/16. And look at that, it is. Bingo bango. Alright, so real quick, let's draw our lines. Remember, I want to be very nice and light when I do this. Now, so this is completely centered, but I also need to find the center of the circle in order to start the ellipse. Now it becomes very important that you guys do this exact sequence. So I'm going to find the center by doing crosshair to crosshair, corner to corner, and I might have to be a little bit darker for you guys. So we're going to go a little bit darker so you guys can actually see it. Hope that works. Hey Kendall, will you do me a favor? Turn all those lights off except for that bar one, and I just want to see what happens with the screen. We're trying to see these lines better, but it seems to just get darker. So turn one off right here. Let me see what it looks like. Turn that one off. Okay, turn that one back on. Turn that one off. Okay, turn that one back on, turn this one off. Perfect. Yeah, that'll work. Oh, okay. Sounds good. Okay, so here I am. I hope we can see that a lot better. Turning the light on just kind of defeats the whole purpose. So hopefully this works for you guys. Anywho, so let's go back real quick. I need to begin drawing this circumference here, or I mean this ellipse, and there's a bunch of methods to doing this, and it involves using compasses. So a person can't just set the compass from here to there and arc, and then set the compass from here to there and arc, because it's an oblong ellipse, and that's not what we're looking for. You've got to follow this exact set of steps here. So real quick, let's just put this away. Let's draw a horizontal line right across the middle here. And then we're going to go ahead and draw a vertical line, because we need to know these lines. And I better draw them all the way up and all the way down, just for the purpose of knowing where they're at. Okay, all right. My next step is I'm going to draw from here all the way out to the large radius. So this is the large radius. We call it the major radius, and then the minor radius. So this is the minor radius. This is the major radius, because it's a lengthwise it's longer, and widthwise it's shorter. So it's minus. This is the longer or the major radius. So I'm going to set it there, make sure it swipes good, and then I'm simply just going to swipe it up here like so. Okay, I got to go a little bit darker so you guys can see that. There we go. So I got it there. It's very important that you go up to the vertical point, because now what I need to do is transport this line up to there. So now I have this point here. My next step is we're going to call this point A and point B here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to connect point A and point B real quick. Because I need to be able to bisect that from a line length that goes from point, we'll call this AB, this is going to be C. So I need to set arc from BC okay. All right. Okay, so we're going to call this point D here. Now what I need to do with point A to D is I need to completely bisect it. So I'm going to do the bisecting solution. Remember, it's just you got to go past halfway, right? We wouldn't want to go under, so I'm just going to barely go past. I'm going to do my two arc methods, right? There's one. Here's one. Flip it. Making sure that I'm on my dot, on my point. There's one. There's one. Okay, so now I completely bisected point A and D, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw this line and transport it all the way down to where it touches my other vertical line down here, and then that's going to become a brand new point. So here it is. Boom. So we're going to call this A, B, C, D. This is going to be point E, and this is going to be point F, way down here where it intersected right here. And the reason why you need to know that, oh yeah, F, G, and this is going to be G, this point right here. So, real quick, this whole process here is very important because you get essentially you get 2 points from it that you need to know that you wouldn't know unless you had point G and F. So G and F or F and G are your most important points, because at this point now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set my compass from F all the way up to B, and I'm going to scribe like this, and that becomes the top part of my my major radius right here, and then my minor radius right here is I'm going to come from this point right here, which that point is point G. Make sense? Okay, so G's here and F is way down here somewhere. It's way down here. It's not this point. That point is for this arc right here. Okay, so let's go ahead and pick this up. Now notice this thing's not going to stretch very long, so I'm going to have to go ahead and grab my beam compass again so I can actually do this appropriately. So I'm going to go ahead and stab point F real quick. I'm going to break it loose. I'm going to roll it back just to where it touches point B. Remember, we're looking just for point B right now. There it is. I'm going to lock it up, and I'm going to do one scribe like this. Now I'm going dark just so you guys can see what's going on here, right? So there it is. Now I'm going to put this off to the side because I'm going to use this again. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here with my other compass, and I'm going to go from G to A, and you're going to notice that it touches this brand new arc that we have just established. So here we go. There it is. Bingo bango. See how I just barely touched it? Okay, that's what we're looking for. Darken it up, come down here, do that again. Sweetness. Now, so essentially, if we were to break this up into quadrants, you know, this is a quadrant, this is a quadrant, this is a quadrant, this is a quadrant. What we have finished is pretty much 2.5 quadrants, meaning, I guess you could call it 2 quadrants in whole, but we did 1 full quadrant completed, and then we did 2 half quadrants. And what I mean by that is, notice we have this top arc that is tangent to this minor radius here, and this whole quadrant section is done. But on this side, I only got half of the large arc, the major radius, but I don't have the minor radius. And then same down here, I have the minor radius, but I don't have my major radius here. So instead of completely reversing these processes, you at this point now have point F and point G. Now we just drew point G, did we not? I mean, let's hope I didn't mess with the compass. No, I didn't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this point and I'm going to bring it back over to here to this point, to the other side of the actual drawing, right? And I'm going to scribe right across there. Now that becomes point G if it was mirrored on this horizontal line. And then I'm just going to simply flip this compass around, stab the center, and I'm going to draw my arc. Boom. Let's see if I can darken that up for you guys. Boom, there it is. Now, what I'm going to do next is I'm going to set point F to the center of my object. Make sure I scribe it, right? So it looks like it's pretty good right there. See how it just barely touches? Just barely touches, right? Now I'm just simply going to move the center up here, and I'm going to scribe it up there. Now this, up above that point B, becomes my mirrored point of F across this horizontal plane. So now what do? I grab my beam compass now, and I set this point up here now. Now I haven't touched this beam compass, and now I'm just going to simply scribe it. Boom. Look at that. Now I have my complete ellipse. And I have very valuable points that I need, right? So I'm going to darken some of this up a little bit so we can see some stuff. Boom, boom. Alright, so now we're just going to go ahead and erase some stuff. But points that I need to make sure that I keep is going to be point G, which is the center of this hexagon here. And I also need to keep this point here, which honestly doesn't really mean anything, so I guess that's the only point that I really need to know, because that point becomes the center here. And by looking at this drawing, there's no way of finding that point unless you do this method right here. This method is what brings point G. Without it, you cannot complete this drawing. That's why it's important we start with the ellipse first. A lot of kids make the mistake and they start drawing it here, and they think they got it, but in reality, when I asked them, how did you figure out to do this? They said, well, I just came over here this far, and by looking at this radius and that radius, I added those radiuses, and then this radius is in tangent to that radius. So it just became kind of complex versus just doing it the right way the first time and finding point G from our ellipse method of drawing arcs. So real quick, I'm just going to go ahead and erase a bunch of stuff because I don't really need it anymore. Now I'm not going to spend a lot of time erasing this because I don't want to waste all this whole video doing erasing lines when you guys can simply do this on your own time. But I want to make sure I clean it up enough to where we can start visualizing the object so you guys can stop the video and try to accomplish it yourself at this point. Alright, so there's that. Now remember, I don't need this point, yeah? Only point I really need is point G, but in reality I've stabbed point G, so I'm going to go ahead and erase it too. Okay, so here we are. Remember, I'm not going to get any more fine detail because eventually you guys would come back with the erasing shield and clean up a lot of this stuff around this ellipse. But we have a point here now. So now there's going to be a couple things I'm going to do. First, I'm going to draw this radius, which is that diameter of 2.76. So I'm going to set my compass to half of that. And then I'm also going to come over here and notice I got 3.62 as a radius from here, and I'm going to go ahead and arc that. And at that point, I'm going to make sure I draw these ones with this diameter of 0.625, so I got to split that in half, and then this radius of 0.75 from that exact same center. So we're going to do multiple things here real quick, and we'll get started. So let's identify this point here so we can get this section first, and we'll work our way from the right to our left. So 0.75 over, then set our compass to half that. 0.75 over. There's the center. Let's set our compass to half that. Okay, there's my center. I'm going to go ahead and scribe it like this because this is the big radius right now we're dealing with. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to find half the distance of 5/8, which is that decimal of 0.625 divided by 2, so 0.31. So let's go back to our conversion chart. 0.3125 is right here. 0.3125, which is 5/16. So I'm going to go ahead and set my compass to 5/16 now. So there's 2, 4, and 5/16. This is going to be completely dark because it is a solid circle, nothing to it. Bingo bango, there we go. Now, before I get any further, I'm going to look at this tangent radius to the outside of an arc to the inside of an arc. Now remember, if it's a tangent radius here and it's outside of an arc, you take the radius and you add it to your tangent radius. So 0.25 plus 0.2 or 0.75 plus 0.25 is 1. So I'm going to set my compass to 1 inch. And I'm simply going to just arc it outside that 0.75 radius so I have some points to work off of when I do my other points that were to follow. So we're going to mark it up here somewhere. Make sure I do it big enough because I don't know exactly where it's going to be. So there we go. Now, I've worked these points. Now I'm going to do on my major points. Okay, so I'm going to set the compass to 3.62, which if we go back to our conversion chart, 0.62 is 2 decimal places, right? 0.62 right here, which comes out to 5/8. So I'm going to set it to 5/8 here. So we're going to go 3 and 5/8, and honestly, this metric scale is easier to stab on because it actually has laser engraved spots for the hashes versus just raised letters, so it's hard to stay on top, and printed. So let's stretch this out to 3 and 5/8. There it is. I'm going to come from this vertical line right here. I'm going to arc like this. Right? Now, I'm not going to finish that because there's a small radius there that needs to be cleaned up. Now, I'm just going to flip it around because I know this side also has the exact same thing. There it is. Right? Now, with this tangent radius, guys, notice it's inside this major radius. So I've got to take this measurement and I got to subtract it by my tangent radius of 0.25, right? So let's just do the math. 3.62 minus 0.25, I come up with 3.37. So what do I need to do? Pull my conversion chart out. 2 decimal places, 0.37. 0.37, boom. So it's pretty close to 5/8, so, or 3/8, I'm sorry. So I'm going to set it to 3 and 3/8. This is what I'm going to do. Let's pull this off to the side. 3 and 3/8. Now, the whole point of this is to find the center for these little points right there, because that becomes the center for my tangent radius of 0.25. There it is. Now, while we're here, guys, take a look. We have another tangent radius to the inside of the major arc here, which is 0.5. So what do I need to do? Let's do it again. 3.62 minus my tangent radius of 0.5. I come up with 3.12. Go back to the conversion chart. 0.31 comes out to 0.3125, close to it, 5/16. So I need to set it to 3 and 5/16 for my other tangent radius center point right here. So here we go, 3 and 5/16. So there's 2, 4, and 5/16. Here's this. Remember, we're kind of doing larger scribes here because we don't know where this other circle is going to be. But notice, see how we're working our way from right to left? So we essentially have the center here for this tangent radius, which we'll go back and later and do. But we also have part of this tangent radius centers for here and down here because we already figured the math. Now we got to do the large circle here. So half of 0.2 or 2.76. 2.76 divided by 2 because diameter is always all the way across, so we got to split it in half in order to draw with the compass. So 0.38. Revert back to the template here for your conversion chart. 0.38, 0.38, 0.38. Boom. 3/8 again. So I'm going to set this thing to 1 and 3/8, and we are going to draw it. 1 and 3/8. There's 1 and 3/8. Remember, that center is point G. So I need to go back to point G right here, and this entire circle is dark. So I might as well darken it. There it is. Now, real quick, we have a tangent radius to the outside of an arc. So I've got to take this radius and I got to add my tangent radius of 0.5. So we're just going to go add 0.5. Comes up to 1.88. Back to the conversion chart. You're going to notice this conversion chart is used a lot. 0.88, 2 decimal places, comes out to 7/8. So we're going to set it to 1 and 7/8. Let's see if this small compass can stretch that far. And it looks like it can't. So I got to switch and go to the bigger compass and bring it all the way back in. 1 and 7/8. There it is. Come from the same center. Now I have my center point. Boom, there it is. Boom, there it is. Now I have these points right here. Bingo, bango. Something seems weird here. Yeah, something seems weird here. See this space right here? This space looks right. This space does not. So what we need to do is set this back, because I think I scribed something wrong here. Stretch this back out to this measurement. And now we're going to flip it around and go from over here to over there. There's the measurement I'm looking for. See that point? See how these points are parallel with each other? Boom, boom. There it is. So these become my center points for my tangent radius of 0.5. And these become the center points for my tangent radius of 0.25. Now we're not going to bother drawing them quite yet, because now I've got to draw my hexagon. And I'm going to resort back to my booklet here, yeah? Remember, you're going to be using this booklet a lot, because you asked me a question about how does this tangent radius work, and I say resort back to your handout. And I'm not doing that as in trying to be a jerk. I'm doing that more as in trying to get you guys to learn to use your resources that are available to you versus always pleading for help. Because I am here to help you, but one thing I am definitely trying to do is prepare you for life. And when you go into college, you need to be able to think on your feet and be able to find your own resources in a sense when you can't be helped. So, alright, quit ranting and raving, here we go. So I've got to draw that, and that, guess what, is across the flats, okay? So if we were to look at it like this, okay, that's this. But notice it's going this way, so if I was to flip this around, those degrees are at 60, and they're outside that circle. So what do I need to do? I need to scribe a circle with a diameter of 1.5. So half of 1.5 is 0.75. So I'm simply going to just set my compass to 0.75, came from the same point of G, and then scribe this guy. Remember, this is across the flats, which means I've got to be completely tangent to the outside arcs. So let's just do the top first. Remember, we're going very light right now, but dark for you so you guys can see what's going on. And I probably need to be a little bit darker. Yeah, you guys can see that. Let's darken this one up a little bit better for you. Boom, boom. Now my next step is I'm going to take my triangle at 60 degrees. If I can, there it is. Okay, and I'm just simply going to go like this. Outside the circle, flip it, do the outside of the circle, outside of the circle. Alright, here we go. Tangent, yes. I don't know exactly how long they're going to be because I don't have my other point quite yet. Now I'm going to flip it. Now I know my point, so I'm going to darken these things. Come through, outside point, darken it. Bingo bango, come back, darken it again. Now I know my lines, so I'm going to really go hard and dark so you guys can see this. Bingo bango. Now, my last step would be to do these small radiuses. So this tangent radius here is 0.5. So I already found my center, which is somewhere right in here. I'm going to set it to 0.5, draw those last ones, and then come over here and set this one to 0.25. 0.25 is a little bit hard, so I might grab a template for that. And here we are. So, here it is, 0.5. Bingo bango, there's my center. Oh, got a little off there. So my radius got a little off. Bingo bango. There it is. Okay. Now we're going to come over here. Bingo bango. Okay, there we are. I'm going to grab the template. Remember dealing with decimals, so I'm going to make sure I got my decimal template. Okay. I'm going to come over here. I'm going to look for the radius of 0.25, but I need to look for half because that's the actual diameter. Look, there it is. Darken. 0.5. And darken. Alright, last but not least, erase a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to spend a lot of time erasing with you because you kind of already have the idea of what's going on, and at this point know how to draw center lines. So, not going to get into detail with you about all this, but I can let you watch me draw the end of this. Yeah, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time on it. You kind of get the idea. But last but not least, you know I'm kind of a bit of a freak about center lines, so please draw your center lines appropriately so I can see stuff. Okay. We got one right in the center here, like so. And then one more over here. Okay, looking at it real quick. I have a center line here, I have a center line here, I have a center line here, all the way across. The last one I need is this one right here. Bingo bango. Alright guys, this drawing is done. Kendall, will you hit those lights for me, please? Remember, if you have questions, please ask, but I've got to see all these arcs. If I don't see arcs, I'm not going to accept it. And if you do this on green paper first, I'll accept it, but I've got to see the green paper. Alright, that's it, guys. Hope you have a great day.